What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Lou Reviews, your home for critical thinking in the realm of the unexplained. I am your host, Luis Jimenez. Just getting all my ducks lined in a row here. Hello, everyone in the chat. Wise Monkey, Mega Briar Patch, Simon Fly. I think this is the hands down the best start to a chat in any show in the history of any show. Wise Monkey was the first one to comment in the chat. Says first the worst, with Mega Briar Patch coming in second, saying second the schmeckend. Simon Fly comes in third the turd, and John Hunsley, may the foreskin be with you. That's a great 1, 2, 3, 4 right there, and totally hilarious. So guys, thank you for being here. We have an amazing show today. We are welcoming back probably the most visited guest of our show. I'm pretty sure it's 8 or 9 times at this point that we've had Mick West on the show. It's been quite a few. Anyway, we'll get into how many times. I'm sure he totally remembers. We're going to get into his new PBS show that's going to be coming out called What Are UFOs, and why Marik Von Rennenkampff is being so insufferably selective with the clips and the information that he's sharing in regards to Gimbal, Go Fast, and Tic Tac. In particular, Gimbal, he's just been... we'll get into it. We'll get into it. I'm going to try and be gentlemanly, because we've got Mick West here, and he brings the gentlemanly out. So let's do that, shall we? I'm going to go ahead and bring down our music here. Let's bring down the tunes. Let's put those over there. And welcome, probably hands down. Mick, I know you don't like the term skeptic.
Skeptic's okay.
Skeptic's okay?
Problem. Yeah.
What's the other term?
Debunker.
Debunker. That's the one.
Skeptical. It's just basically asking for evidence for things.
Yeah.
People confuse skeptic with cynic, but really it's all about being scientific.
Yeah, I think when I first had my very first discussion with you, I think that's where I thought you were coming from. I thought you were being cynical and debunking and not taking all of the things into account and information, especially when it came to the cockpit recordings. And then of course, yeah. I've done my diabolical turn in the community, and now I've become a skeptic just like you. I think primarily the biggest reason I was holding on to this belief system was my own personal encounter when I was a young man, and then now as an adult, really applying critical thinking and probabilities and things like that. And also just how the human mind and memory works, especially when a memory's 30 years old or older. So that I think that's, came to the realization, okay, I think I'm wrong on this whole UFO thing. And conversations, with my co-hosts and having multiple conversations with you, definitely helped me put on a more rational sort of hat when it comes to this discussion. So, I'm always indebted to you for that. So, with the whole escaping the rabbit hole, but in actual, tangible, example as myself.
Yeah, it's great.
It's fun.
That. Yeah, it's very interesting. The whole UFO universe is kind of a microcosm in a way of the various different things that I talk about in Escaping the Rabbit Hole. Yeah. And you get the same types of things, like people who get into it and then get out of it. And it's a similar type of thing, a process that people go through of believing things, being convinced by things, and then embarking on this journey of investigating the evidence and watching lots of YouTube videos and talking to like-minded people. And then at some point there's a kind of a shift for people where they kind of realize that not everything is as it seems. And I think for you that, and for many other people, that came with the realization that people that you've been talking to were saying things that weren't entirely accurate. Right. And you start to it's almost like you start to give yourself permission to question other things, and then when you start looking into things without this, this desire to believe, then it kind of changes the perspective, and people can get out relatively quickly sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes though it takes them a few decades.
Indeed. Sometimes they never get out.
Yeah, it was funny because I was really into it in my early, prepubescent years, and then I didn't touch it until 2017. I mean, I've always had sort of a faint interest in it, but when the legitimization of it, or at least the perceived legitimization of the conversation in 2017, when you had these videos and, of course, you've got the cockpit recorder, everybody knows the history and the New York Times article and these lawmakers, and it's like, oh, wow, okay, let's really pay attention to this again. And then, it took a good, 2.5 years to figure out, not only are some of these things that people are saying inaccurate, but in a lot of cases, they're telling you what you want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it works. It's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, people want a certain thing. A lot of people like yourself are people who have had some kind of experience regarding UFOs or something related to them. And so you go out looking for either an explanation of what you saw or a validation of what you saw. And so, like, when you come across someone who's doing those things, explaining and or validating it, it's very seductive, because it's kind of like, this is, I saw this when I was younger or whenever, and maybe quite recently, and then, here's an explanation, or here's a guy telling me that I'm not crazy. And it's very, very compelling. And, I think you see that in a lot of people in the UFO community, have had some kind of experience, or they have some kind of belief, or they have some kind of perhaps similar belief, like they believe in psychic powers or something like that, and then they see UFOs as kind of being an extension of that, and they think, people were mocking me for my belief in psychic powers, but UFOs are real, therefore perhaps these other things are real, because UFOs are also associated with psychic powers. So it's an interesting topic. But one of the things we talk about, I don't want to jump ahead here, but in this film that I did for Nova, that I was in for Nova, is that it's not just that. It's not just this, self-fulfilling prophecies, and it's not just wishful thinking. There are actually real issues around UFOs.
Yes.
And there are actual issues of national security, and there are issues of scientific interest, things that you can actually look into, because people are seeing things in the sky. We can't always identify what those are, or sometimes not quickly, sometimes never. And they might be things that are of interest to the military, and possibly even things that are of interest to science. Even if it's just like the science of why people perceive things in a certain way.
Right.
That's an interesting thing. So I think we got a bit of a problem in that we got this stigma around UFOs, and a lot of people are thinking that it's a silly subject. We shouldn't talk about it, and this is just like crazy people who thought they saw something when they were a kid and now they believe in it. That's not all it is. There's lots of really serious aspects of it, and I think we need to acknowledge that. And if there is areas where we can apply science to it, we should be applying science to it.
Right. No, it's you make a great point in that there are other things around this topic that are very serious, and you pointed out national security, and you'd also sent me where you were at in the sort of pre-publication of Imminent, Lou Elizondo's new book. And I noticed in the first especially in the forward of the book, that's again, and it's the thing that they led with in 2017, is that this is a national security issue that has always been at the forefront of this conversation, and their goal in 2017 was to help destigmatize the UFO issue, so therefore it can be reported properly. And if I'm being honest, since 2017, I think they've accomplished that goal.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? I mean, especially with the legislation that's put in place, but more importantly, the the structure in which they have to report these incidents, especially if they interact with it. If they interact with the UAP, they have to report it within 11 hours to the Aero office. So it's being taken more seriously, and every level of every branch of the military at least knows, okay, it's okay to report these things. So that's a big win.
I think, yeah, for like ufology in general, there's been a lot of progress. If you're someone who thinks that UFOs should be studied seriously, which I do to a degree, I think that a lot has changed since 2017.
Yeah.
And this is the type of thing that we've been discussing for a while as well. But we have a Pentagon office now. We have Arrow. Now people obviously have various opinions about what that is it some kind of propaganda thing or not? But that's going to happen regardless.
I agree. There's no way to put out that information where you're not going to get somebody to look at it and critique it from the conspiracy angle anyway.
But we've got essentially what ufology has been asking for. Like, ufology has been wanted to be taken seriously for a while. And this is something I wrote about years ago when this kind of started, is that you have to be careful what you ask for. Right. Because what's happened is ufology has been taken seriously, and there are now serious people looking at it, to various degrees, with various degrees of interest and competence. And so things are actually happening. Things are being focused upon that weren't focused upon before, and lights are being shone in dark corners. Like we now have investigations of these UFO videos. We haven't had very much in the way from Arrow in terms of definitive reports with science backing it up and all the evidence being presented. But we have had some reports where they've said they've resolved certain cases. Some of them are fairly straightforward ones, like there was a drone flying through a frame, and it was they told you it was a drone, and they said the trail it left behind it was a compression artifact. It's all very straightforward. Others they haven't really made very much progress with, like the Gimbal and Go Fast videos. They haven't said anything about it. Really. It's unidentified still.
I was going to ask you what you kind of you're telling me right now is sort of your opinion on what they've put out. In my opinion, I think they've done a really good job, especially in the instance of the Kona Blue paper that they put out, in that if that Kona Blue paper had not been put out by Arrow, and let's say it got leaked, then we would have to be combating all of the things in this Kona Blue paper and all of these things that were never funded, were never come to fruition, were never tested, were never scientifically legitimately looked at in any way. But because it leaked, and it is an actual Department of Defense paperwork, therefore, it must be real. And because Arrow beat that to the punch, that I guess leak, I don't know if it was going to leak or anything, but I'm glad that they put it out before it came to that. So therefore you could say, well, look guys, it's not a secret. We told you about it and it never got funded.
Yeah. Kona Blue was supposed to be the successor for OSAP and AATIP, which is basically essentially Robert Bigelow's program to study UFOs and ghosts and things at Skinwalker Ranch. And it was people like Jay Stratton. And it's very interesting looking at this history of the UFO investigation thing. It wasn't taken seriously at the start, and I think that kind of allowed people with an interest in the subject to kind of go in. It's like, who's going to investigate UFOs? So it's not like, Jay Stratton's the UFO guy, let him do it. And so these guys end up leading the charge on this, and so we end up with stuff like Kona Blue, and we end up with stuff like the Skinwalker Ranch investigations, the OSAP investigation, which really weren't things that had people within the Pentagon with more important things to do had spent some time on it. They might not have approved these things. But of course, we have a history of this type of thing. It's pretty fascinating. Like the Pentagon's involvement with essentially paranormal stuff.
Right.
And some of the best writing about it actually is in the UFO community's books. Things like Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. A lot of that is, I'm sure, stuff that actually happened. I don't think that the werewolf stuff actually happened, but the stuff
or
about
the dino
how
beavers.
like how they set up a secret program to study these strange happenings at
Right.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, the
Is
$22
essentially
million
correct.
was spent. The security was hired. The people were there. It's just
Yeah, yeah.
the reports, I think, is where where things start to fall apart, and the things that they submitted to the Pentagon.
Yeah,
Um,
they didn't really get very much. They had these very amorphous papers. I think there was also like a very large document that they came up with that they basically buried because it was too embarrassing for the Pentagon to to do anything with. So they probably just slapped a bunch of classified stickers on it and put it into the Indiana Jones warehouse somewhere.
right.
But it's these things were happening. People are investigating UFOs. They're investigating the paranormal. They're doing psychic viewing.
Yep.
The Lou Elizondo in his book, he goes over some of these things that were discussed in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. He talks a bit about the ORSAP program and how he got funding. And he says that some of the funding was taken from them. They lost $10 million to another program. So it's actual things. These, I'm sure, things that actually happened. This program was stood up within the Pentagon. And I think back then, when these things were happening, it really wasn't taken seriously. If you think about, like, say, the FAA's stance on UFOs, you go back to the early 2000s, the FAA had a section in the manual, the FAA FAR Aim manual,
Yeah.
that actually had a phone number to call. It says, if you see a UFO, call this number.
Right.
And you call this number, connects you to Robert Bigelow, to Bigelow Aerospace. And basically the same organization that's investigating ghosts. They had a section on their website for reporting UFOs, and another section for reporting ghosts and poltergeists, and another one for cattle mutilations.
Right.
So the FAA was just like, who can take care of this? Oh, this Bigelow guy set up something. We'll just give them his number. So they did that. And it's kind of ridiculous. Later they changed it, but they haven't really changed it very much in the last decade or so. But recently, I think they've got better procedures. And I think things are starting to change in that pilots are starting to report things more openly. But it's still very much, there's still stigma about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Real quick, I just want to let the audience know. Yes, we're going to be taking questions here, guys. But if for the first, I'd say half hour, 45 minutes, it'll just be a straight interview with me and Mick, and then I'll open it up to questions, and then you guys can ask all the questions you want. Mick, are you okay with people calling in and asking you questions too? Is that okay? Yeah. All right, great. So we'll also open up the studio if you guys want to call in and ask Mick a question. That's more than fine as well. So going back to this, another thing that I did love, going back to Arrow, and there's a couple things that I just want to get sort of your thoughts on. Kirkpatrick had mentioned that before he left, they were working, because the Gimbal video in particular, there is no longer version. Remember how we were in the Big Phone Home 3, we were asking for the full versions, all the data, like, more data, the better, right? And so he revealed that there is no longer version of Gimbal, and that they were putting the Gimbal footage and trying to recreate it in a lab and writing a paper that basically explains what's happening in the Gimbal video. Did you hear that? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that sounds like what you should do.
Right.
Really. I mean, ideally you would fly a plane around and video another plane and video other objects in the sky and see what they look like and get different footage. The big problem with the Gimbal video that we have is that there really isn't any similar footage. We've got a few clips of the AATIP camera videoing other jets, like, up close.
Right.
But
Within
we
a
don't have
mile. When you
anything
say up close, you
where
mean
it's-
within a mile or so.
Yeah, within a few miles,
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 miles, something like that. Up
But
close,
nothing
you don't
at
want to be too
20,
up close in the
30,
sky.
40, 50, 100
because the
miles.
hypothesis, I mean, even like the kind of the non-human intelligence hypothesis or the advanced technology hypothesis is still 6 to 8 miles.
Right.
And I don't know if we have like a good example of a plane at that distance, but no one's really suggesting it's a plane at that distance. If it's a plane, it's going to be something like 25 to 30 or 40 miles away.
Right.
So we don't have any good examples of that with the AATIP. We do have a good example from the Chilean Navy case, which is a very similar thing. We see in that case the glare around the engines exactly the same size as it would be in the gimbal case, the case at that distance. So we do have one good example of glare at a long distance. But yeah, back to like Arrow, they are, you know, they're doing it in a lab, which is okay, but it's not like, again, it's not long distance. You know, it's not they can kind of simulate it, but it won't be exactly the same. But they can do some basic stuff. They can have a guy hold up a cigarette lighter and walk from one side of the warehouse to the other and have the thing track him, and then they can see how it rotates.
Right.
So that would be a great first step. If they actually have the camera, they should do that. They can do different heat sources, like get a little blowtorch or something, or heat up a steel ball to a high temperature, and then see what it looks like in the infrared. You know, see if it does get glare. See when it gets down to this size where it's only like 2 or 3 pixels on screen, and it's super hot, and you've got this neutral background or a cold background, ideally. Does it flare up? Does it like appear as a glare, or do you have to like knock the camera out of focus? So these are all things that I would do.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, maybe they are doing that, right? I mean,
exactly.
They haven't released it yet.
We don't know. We don't know.
Let me just officially speaking, because I know you're not. You did a show with Nova. Has anyone at the Department of Defense or the Aero Office reached out and said, "Hey, by the way, thanks for this," or you know, hey, what would you do for this, or you know, just pick your brain on how to conduct experiments, or just like the example that you used there, you know, hey, even in an aircraft, you know, hangar, you could take a lighter, go to the other end, and with the mathematics and stuff, that makes sense.
I haven't been able to give anybody direct advice like that. I don't think anybody is. It's difficult. I think it's.
Well, they're experts as well, right? I mean.
Yeah, exactly, and not everyone thinks that I am the best person for the job. You know, who is this guy? Mick West is a former video game programmer. What does he know?
Who is the best person for this job? Right?
Yeah, I guess they would.
Known for looking at stuff like
someone
this.
who is an expert on sensors or physics or optics or something like that. So Travis Taylor. Travis Taylor would be the best person for the job. Yeah, they should get him on Arrow. I'm just kidding, of course.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think, again, like, I think they're doing, like you said, there's no real great way to be transparent with this kind of information, because at every level, people are going to poo-poo it because it's coming from the government. But I think in a lot of cases, and you know, they've not debunked. I don't think they're debunking things. They're giving you sort of probabilities of, hey, we think it fits in this realm. You know, they're not saying it's 100% definitive unless they have the definitive answer to it.
Yeah, they're cautious, but also not cautious. Like, you listen to Kirkpatrick talking, and he does long pauses before he says anything. He's probably thinking, like, am I breaking some kind of classified agreement or something by saying this? But so he's cautious in the way he phrases things. But he also is quite willing to kind of come out with various theories that don't seem like they're very well thought through. I think like the example of the illumination balloon being an explanation for a particular UFO. You know, these balloons that get used on movie shoots outdoors.
Right.
They're filled with helium and they have a light inside, and they're used for outdoor illumination.
Yep.
It doesn't really sound particularly plausible as something that someone could mistake for a UFO and then get away with it. It seems such an obscure thing. I don't think it's if you in that particular case, and that was the Eglin Air Force Base case. The thing about Arrow is that it's an organization that uses other organizations to do some of the work. So there's the Arrow team itself, as I understand it. This is Kirkpatrick's description. There's the Arrow team itself. Then they have their science and technology partners. Who are somebody, I don't know, like a university or a company or somebody who specializes in, I don't know.
Well, would it be that team at NASA that advises? Would it be that panel?
It could be people from NASA, but I don't think so, because I think NASA hasn't really been doing that type of thing. But it could be some overlap. There could be some other people. So there's the science and technology people. Then there's also the intelligence community people. And he describes it as kind of being like, red team, blue team, or like A/B teaming. Like, so they both go off and they look at the thing and they come up with their conclusions, and they come back and compare notes, and then they compare them with the notes of Arrow. And so what you end up with is a three-way opinion, or maybe even more than three ways. And if you read the report of the Eglin Air Force Base case, where it was this thing that looked like it was white on the bottom and dark on the top,
Right.
everyone thought it was a balloon. All three of them thought it was a balloon, but they kind of differed. Like the science and technology people thought it was like a weather balloon that was being kind of illuminated by Earthshine. I'm not sure if I got the right people, but one of the teams thought it was illuminated by Earthshine, so like light reflecting off the ground or off of clouds, which seems rather bizarre. I'd like to see some examples of that. The other team said that it was also a balloon, but they thought that it was just the low sun, the angle of the sun, and the way the plane was looking at it, that was causing it to look bright on the bottom. It wasn't actually light coming from the ground. And then the Arrow team thought it was this kind of weird balloon, which was white on the bottom and dark on the top.
So you got three balloon.
Yeah, completely different, not completely different, but very different explanations. And Kirkpatrick seemed more fond. There's a commonality in that it's a balloon, but why do they have to go all in with this weird explanation of the lighting balloon? It doesn't seem to make sense, because there's not really enough evidence to show that. And it seems very speculative.
Well, to me,
so I think they're cautious, but not cautious enough.
Well, the way I read it was, because there was a company very close to the base that makes these balloons, and they're tested there. So, I mean, it's a lot more, in my mind, I'm like, well, it's a lot more probable that one of those things got loose than this being a non-human intelligence, right? Yeah. So, and then I go back to another thing that Kirkpatrick says, and this actually shocked me, and I'm wondering what you think of this, when he said that over 10,000 balloons are released in our atmosphere daily.
Yeah, well, it depends how you count them. There's probably millions of balloons daily. If you count all the party balloons
balloons and stuff,
he was really referring to scientific and technical balloons.
Right.
And
That's
in the
wild.
in the US alone, like weather balloons are released from weather stations across the United States. I think there's about 200 weather stations in the United States. I could be wrong there. And they're done twice a day in 12-hour intervals. And these weather balloons have a little radio in them, and they go through the air, and they detect what the atmosphere is like at various levels, and then that's used to feed data into the weather forecasts models and the computer models, combined with satellite data and ground-based observations and observations from planes. All that data together makes our weather forecast. So this is a very important part of the weather forecast. So yeah, that's a very common thing. All the time there's these giant weather balloons. They start out like 5-6 feet wide, and then when they get up into the atmosphere, they're like 20-30 feet, because they expand, because they're just latex. So they get seen all the time as UFOs, and you see video of them all the time. But it's a big country, so if you stand outside your house, you're very unlikely to see a weather balloon unless you're downwind of where they release them.
Right.
But worldwide, there's lots of other reasons to release balloons. People release balloons for scientific reasons. Some of the light weather balloons, some of them they're just wanting to see how the wind blows. Sometimes they measure things from the ground.
Some of them are flat earthers trying to get real answers.
Some of them are trying to detect the curve. But there's a lot of balloons. There probably are thousands of scientific and weather balloons released every day, if you count like throughout the entire world, and many more times more than that, like party balloons. They're huge. There's a huge problem off the East Coast in the Navy training ranges, where balloons, by the prevailing winds, this is something Kirkpatrick talked about in Marik's interview. The prevailing winds go from west to east, and so all the balloons go off the coast, and they're all over the ocean. And that's actually something that shows up in Arrow's map of UFOs, the UFO hotspots.
Right.
If you look at the map of UFO hotspots, there are training ranges off the east coast and off the west coast.
Right.
But you only see these, hotspots off the east coast,
because the winds
because
blow
the east
out.
coast is the one that has the winds blowing from inland.
Right.
And on the West Coast, you see hotspots in Arizona where all the balloons from
are inland.
Los Angeles have blown over from there. So it's a very big indication that prevailing winds have something to do with UFOs, and therefore balloons are, unfortunately, a lot of UFOs are balloons. Not all balloons, and it doesn't mean they're not aliens, but a lot of them are
well,
balloons.
obviously it's not the sexy answer, right? It's not an answer that anybody wants to hear, and I think that's kind of what John Oliver highlighted really well in his sort of UFO monologue, is that usually when you get to the bottom of these things, it's boring, it's not fun, it's not aliens, and so therefore no one really pays attention to it until someone says, "Holy shit, it's an alien." But I did find it. Go ahead.
That's why the videos are so exciting for people, and that's why it was such a big deal when we actually got some official videos from the government. Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon managed to get these videos sneaked out of the Pentagon, and they show things that look like flying saucers flying around, and so everyone was like, here at last is something that you can actually see. And it's not just these stories. So that was a big step in ufology, was this official thing. But of course, it hasn't really panned out since then, but it has been a very big motivating force for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, that kind of segues into Marik, into his sort of crusade to I don't know what exactly he's trying to attach to the mystery of the videos. Like, he's not saying they're aliens, but he's also not providing any solutions to what these things could be, and he's also avoiding all of the solutions that have kind of been given, and then being very selective with the responses he gets from the experts that he finds. What's going on here? What is going on here, Mick?
Marik Von Rennenkampff is I'm not sure what he does now, but he used to. I think he's kind of a consultant or a student or something, but he's worked in the government and the DoD, and he did stuff like doing like travel arrangements for Obama and things like that.
And by the way, I've seen his DoD credentials. I've seen pictures. They're floating around. A few journalists have them. So I mean, it's not a secret that he's a former DoD employee.
No, I mean, he's been photographed with Obama, so he's a real person with a real something to do with the DoD. But now, I talked to him I interviewed him a while back when I was having Jon Snow. Was it Jon Snow? Jeremy Snow. Jon Snow's from Game of Thrones. Jeremy Snow. And before he came on to talk, I talked to Marik a bit, and he said he used to do something to do with weapons of mass destruction, which I think like the type of thing that like Rand does, like think tanks type stuff, where you simulate how America could best come out of being hit by nuclear weapons, stuff like that. I don't know exactly what he did. And the only other thing we know that he does is that he writes opinion pieces for The Hill.
UFO opinion pieces.
Yeah, which is it's kind of weird. Like, I mean, I don't want to seem like I'm stalking Marik, but he's an interesting chap. He wrote nothing but pro Hillary Democrat supporting pieces for a number of years at The Hill, and then one day he wrote a piece about how UFOs can unify the two parties. And then after that, he wrote nothing but UFOs.
Yeah,
it was kind of weird. But I think to give him the benefit of the doubt, like I think that he is someone who is a true believer, a genuine believer. He became convinced, he said, by seeing David Fraver on Joe Rogan, which a lot of people have been convinced by David Fraver's account. If you read like Lou Elizondo's new book, the preview of that just kind of came out. Elizondo talks about let's see. I think it was actually the introduction with Chris Mellon. Chris Mellon was talking about how the Nimitz case was very compelling for him. And I think Lou talked about it too, because it was one of the cases that Jay Stratton showed him. So it's one of these kind of things that people within the UFO community gets them sucked in, and it's something that people who want to get people interested in the UFO community will show to other people to kind of
that's
bring
what I
them
show
into the
people.
fold.
Yeah, that's what I used. That's the first thing I would show people is the footage.
Yeah,
you know,
it's very compelling, and not just the footage. The footage of him talking.
Right.
Yeah, he's a pilot. He's a super pilot. He's a Top Gun.
Well, even in Congress, he was the most powerful testimony at that hearing. Like he was the most
only
compelling.
one who's seen anything.
Right.
Like Ryan Graves has seen stuff like on his app flare maybe, and is definitely on his radar, and he's talked to people who've seen things a lot, but he hasn't personally seen anything with his naked eyes. David Grush, who knows what he's seen, but he doesn't want to talk about it. And David Fraver had this one very, very compelling incident, and obviously Alex Dietrich was there with him, and Jim Slay, and one other unnamed person. And they saw something. They obviously saw something. Some real object was there. They saw it. It appeared to them to be a Tic Tac object making amazing maneuvers. And so this is like, I don't know, like half of all ufology now. This is what it's all based on. People believe if you could just take two things that ufology is based on, modern ufology is based on, it would be the Nimitz encounter and the book UFO and Nukes. UFOs and Nukes. And if you read UFO and Nukes, the intro of that, the first chapter, it's basically a Bible for ufology. It's all this stuff. It's talking about what's going on, and the David Fraver encounter is almost like the second coming or something. It's like the event that proved everything. So you've got these two things, these two aspects of it, these books of historical data, and then these modern events that actually happened, but we don't know exactly what they were, and it makes a compelling case. You can't deny it. But when you actually kind of start doing the analysis, getting down to it, it still remains unfortunately ambiguous. You can't say for sure that this is something that was unambiguously anomalous. It's not for sure something that was definitely non-human. And so we're still left essentially in the same situation that we were before.
I think I understand what you're saying, but I think the more well, I've spoken to everybody in this discussion, but the more I think about the Nimitz encounter, I think it was a black project that they stumbled on that they weren't supposed to see. And I think that their description of it, especially Commander Dietrich's, hers is so different from David Fraver's. And the biggest discrepancy for me is the time in which the encounter took place. For her, she said it was 10 seconds. Like she looked down and saw it and then looked back up, and that was it for her. But for
8
Fraver,
to 10 seconds. She was very specific. Between 8 and 10 seconds.
8 and 10 seconds. It was very quick. But for Fraver, it was at least 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, this whole encounter.
Yeah,
including going to the cap point, which is you have to fly to that cap point to confirm that the object was there.
I think that was it was 8 to 10 minutes that they had eyes on it.
Eyes on it, right? And then it showed up at the cap point. Do you know if they went to the cap point to confirm it was there? Maybe I'm confused. I think it just showed up on the radar, right, at the cap point.
But the 5 minutes that Fraver is describing is from merge plot, which is when they get to where they think it is on the radar.
All of them,
to
the entire
when it
fleet
shot
of
off.
Planes. Right.
Yeah, to when it shot off. So both planes got there, and Alex Dietrich said that too. She confirmed. I asked her on Twitter, and I can't remember if I asked her exactly that when I interviewed her.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, she said it was from merge plot, so when they arrived, to when it shot off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it appeared on the cap point, and that was later. But for her, that was all 10 seconds. But then Fraver talks about, this is stuff we've all gone over before.
Yeah.
But it's quite amazing, that Fraver talks about specifically, and this is interesting in two ways. He talks about when he went down, he descended slowly,
right,
and he made a specific point of saying that, descending slowly, which meant kind of two things. One was that took more than 10 seconds because
Right.
you can't do a slow descending turn in a 1 mile circle in
Right.
2 seconds. And the other thing that was interesting there is the reason why he descended slowly is that you can't judge the distance to the ocean.
Right.
And he says visually, the ocean looks the same no matter what height you're at, and so you have to be careful about going down rapidly, otherwise you end up like in the drink.
Right.
Which is kind of a fascinating thing because his whole account is predicated upon him being able to accurately measure the distance to things.
And the size of the object. Yeah.
Size and hence distance.
Right.
And he says it was like this 40-foot thing or 48 feet thing, which is also a bit odd because he said it was the size of a hornet, which is actually 56 feet, not 48 feet. But
yeah.
Relatively small difference. But
yeah.
But yeah, the whole thing sounds very, very compelling, but there's a lot of holes in it, and it's not an unambiguous event that we have data on. We have these eyewitness accounts, which sound super compelling. The data we have is this one video of a fuzzy blob that's far away that doesn't do anything. It just sits there, and they're following it, and eventually they lose track on it, and it just continues off on its way. It seems to be moving at constant speed.
Have you spoken to the third pilot involved? I know there's a fourth, but
no,
the
I
third
haven't.
Wizzo, because I'd love to know what their time of this was. Because if he said something like
his
2 minutes.
So there's three people who are out public, and there's one person who's not. He's accidentally outed by what's his name? Chris Mellon's website kind of had a leak.
Yeah.
But Jim Slay was the third guy, and he was public in that he went on Fox News.
Right.
Unfortunately, the show that he went on was this kind of idiot commentator who just kind of made fun of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so he never went back on again. And I think he just kind of soured to the whole idea of talking about it in public. He never seemed very comfortable with it. But so we never heard from him again. But Fraver's been talking about it constantly since, and Alex Dietrich has also been on TV several times. So we've definitely got their account. But this other guy, Jim Slay, he gave an interview to the SCU, which is kind of an interesting thing.
Right.
The Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, UFOs back then. And he did this interview, and then they sequestered it. They didn't release it. And they did say in their report the interview would be available on their website, but it's not. It's not available on their website. They have quoted a few things from his interview. One of the things they quoted was that he saw this heat haze around the Tic Tac. Nobody else saw this heat haze. It's just something only he saw. He was in the same position as Alex Dietrich. She didn't see it. Fraver, who was closer, didn't see it. But yeah, SCU has this secret interview with the third pilot, a detailed interview, could have all kinds of interesting information, and yet they refused to release it. They've selectively released certain quotes from it, but why not release the whole thing?
Everybody right now who's watching this show should go on Twitter and at SCU and ask them for this interview. Because Mick's right. I mean, if we're trying to build a recreation of what happened that day, a third set of eyes would be super helpful to gather some more data. Yeah,
that's something I'm going to do. I'm going to build a recreation in SitRec, my software, of this encounter based on the verbal description. See if we can make it all tally together. Yeah. And one thing I plan on doing is making it virtual reality.
Ooh.
Which I think is going to be very interesting because right now when you see a recreation, you're just seeing it on the screen. Right. Virtual reality, you'll be able to see
how small that thing is,
size things are, and how much things had to move to be perceptible. And this is something that's really been lacking from everybody's understanding of the event. Yeah, is that we can't put ourselves behind their eyeballs, but with virtual reality now you can. Yeah. So this is something I'm gonna work on.
That's fun, man. I'm
already
imagining the video game cover for this ride. It's just the Fraver. Can we call it the Fraver experience?
Yeah. But I think this is something
David
that
Fraver Pro Flyer.
It's something that needs to happen with UFO recreations, and
I agree.
there's no reason not to nowadays.
Yeah.
Because if you're just creating, just a video type thing, it's meaningless. You've got to create what people were seeing.
It would be so great because not only can you see, you could sit there and literally look at anything you want from David Fraver's perspective, but of course you'd be looking at that cross-shaped bubble pattern that he described in the 40-foot tic-tac.
Yes.
But I think it would also be interesting to sit in Dietrich's chair and come to the
And watch
like.
Fraver.
Yeah, and watch Fraver go down and do these maneuvers and figure out, well, how did she get the 8 to 10 second, thing? And Fraver is flying. Yes. It took him, whatever the simulator works out to, but I'm assuming about at least 5 minutes. At least.
Yeah, he said 5 minutes. I mean, he could be stretching it a bit, but yeah. We'll see. Like, because there's physical limits as to what you can do. Like, the planes can only go a certain speed. He said he was going slow, so definitely going subsonic.
Yeah, and he was doing like a corkscrew
like
pattern,
or something.
like he was corkscrewing all the way down to it, almost gliding to it in a way, the way he made it sound.
Yeah, so he's descending slowly,
until
and going around
it
1 mile diameter or 1 mile radius.
Yeah. Until it booped, and then it started mirroring his flight pattern.
Yeah, I mean, the way he described it, it sounded like he's up top, it's down low. When it's down low, he kind of sees it making maneuvers that were kind of weird, like ping-ponging around, like he said. So that's something I could simulate. That what would that actually look like from up above, and to make it look like something that's perceptible in virtual reality. He starts out. They come into this thing 20,000 feet up,
right?
Which is
40 a 40-foot craft from 20,000 feet.
Yeah,
it's
20,000 feet.
It's gonna be a dot.
It's like 3.8 miles, something like that.
Yeah.
So if you imagine looking at a school bus or something like that from 3 miles away. It's not particularly big.
Yeah.
And
so how do you see it?
Propane tank.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I can understand. I can understand how that could be an illusion. Like if you've got something sitting above the water and you're 3 miles away from it, and you've got waves crashing underneath it because I don't know, there's a submarine there or something. I could understand how, especially, and if it's a hot day, like it could give you that sort of swirling image of it moving, but it's still.
That's a good point. Yeah, because the
you're looking
itself,
through 3 miles of atmosphere to look at that thing.
Yeah, that 3 miles isn't too bad. I mean, if you think most planes that fly overhead, they're flying 30,000 feet, which is even higher. You can generally see a plane at 30,000 feet fairly clearly. So you'd probably be able to see the surface of the ocean fairly clear. But what you say was a good point. Like the surface of the ocean is constantly changing, so you don't necessarily have like a fixed frame of reference. Yeah, I guess you would have this bubbly thing at some point, so you'd be relative to that. But maybe that was like moving. Maybe that was like an actual wave or something. Anyway, it's kind of fun stuff to speculate, but it's the proof of the pudding will be when I create this virtual reality thing. I'm going to make it web VR. So it will just be like, plug in your headset and go to the website. And
so you could use like your PlayStation, Google, and Apple.
It should be. I think WebVR is compatible with most things like Oculus and things like that.
Sweet.
I don't even have a headset
neither do
yet,
I.
But
neither do I. But when this comes out, I'm going to have to purchase one.
It.
Yeah,
get myself
then you'll be
Apple one.
Then you'll be a real UFO grifter.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yes. Well, I am being paid. I am being paid.
You're paid.
Write software.
Oh my god, I didn't even think to ask you about the whole, because I've been just this whole Marik thing that's been happening this last couple weeks. Okay, so let's I guess we'll wrap up Marik, and then I kind of want to talk about Matt Ford and the accusations that he's been throwing at you. But
I've forgotten about it.
No, I had forgotten about it too until you had just said that. So yeah, thanks for kind of an unsolicited reminder, because it's crazy. But so what in your we don't know, but Do you think that this hill that Marik is dying on, so to speak, is simply because he believes he's a true believer of this? Or is there something else here? Because personally, I think there's something else here, just based off of phone calls that this guy's given me out of nowhere.
He's
he's a strange cookie, man.
He's very devoted to what he's doing. And I think, either his devotion has led him to be less than, I don't know, he's not dishonest. Well, I guess he is a little bit dishonest. He's misleading.
He's misleading, which is dishonest.
Yeah.
And the people he's doing it for is strange. Yeah, you've blocked him.
I blocked him, and I block people normally when they say like, Mick West, you're an idiot, or something like that. There's, or far worse than that, obviously. But I don't want to say anything on the air. I blocked him because he posted that he'd figured something out, and he did it with the help of Mick West. Yeah. When I completely disagreed with his things. I'd like discuss things with him, and we got over some math together and stuff like that.
Right.
But I'm not on his side, but he tries to make it seem that way. And even recently, when he was acting like Kirkpatrick, he was like trying to enlist me as being on his side when nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, I agree with him that Kirkpatrick messed up that comment about video compression and the gimbal, but that doesn't mean I agree with Marik on anything else. I completely disagree with him on this idea that a nearby flying saucer is a more reasonable explanation than a distant plane. But that's kind of how he presents these things, and then he goes on and on and on, repeating the same things over and over again, and putting these graphics with his red boxes on things, and then these bits of text with things underlined, and it gets very repetitive. But I guess is that like a real strategy that works? Maybe like if you keep repeating the same thing, people will start thinking it's true.
Well, it's good enough for the hill.
It is, like
which is
you
strange.
Mentioned the hill earlier, like what the hill he's chosen to die on. Yeah, he works for the hill as an opinion writer,
right?
And the hill is very friendly towards UFOs, and News Nation. I believe News Nation is the same company as the hill.
It is.
Yeah, and
Next Star, I believe, is the company.
I don't know who actually is running the whole show, but my suspicion there is that there's some guy who's motivated either via personal belief or something else to like promote this type of thing. Maybe he just thinks it's good TV and it gets good eyeballs, which he does.
I think it's a hell of a distraction. It's a good distraction. The question is it an intended distraction? That's where it gets conspiratorial. Like, is
it that good though? Yeah. I mean, like it's not like people are ignoring like Joe Biden because they're interested in UFOs.
That's true.
Maybe some people are, but they wouldn't be that interested in Joe Biden or anyway. Right. They're not like not looking at whatever in politics, or they're not like looking at I don't know, the military industrial complex because it's all UFOs. It's still a pretty small topic.
Yeah. Hold on one second. My girlfriend's on a phone call. She's yelling in the background. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I can't hear it. So.
Okay, good. Well, anyway, it was distracting me. Okay, so
I don't know what's going on.
Right.
I try to act as if everybody's acting in good faith wherever possible.
Right.
Unless they're clearly not.
Well, that's the whole thing with Marik, is that he's taking these videos as if they're a smoking gun when they're missing data. He doesn't even know how far the plane is from the camera system. We don't know that definitively. Like, there's missing data on this.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, if you just boil it down to that, they're not unambiguously anomalous. They're not something where we can say for sure this is something that's amazing that's happening. He's trying to make the case that the more amazing interpretation of the videos matches the eyewitness accounts. So with Gimbal, you got this account from Ryan Graves, who I met last week. That was kind of interesting. Ryan Graves saw the radar data. So when they record the cockpit, they record two things. They record the radar screen, the SA page, which combines radar and other things. It's like a God's eye view, and the video itself. So he says he saw the version that had both of them.
Right.
And he describes what happened as these 5 objects moving in a certain way and then turning around, and then this one object, he says, kind of stopped and then turned back. He described it as having no radius of turn, which means it didn't do this. It just went this, and that would be a radius of turn there, a curve. And if you take that interpretation and you basically force it into the data by making it draw a straight line across the path, then you can get something that semantically matches, something that does a going forward, slow down, goes back. It does kind of have to move up in the air, and it does have to make no sense whatsoever in terms of any type of physics, even like Lazarian physics. If you take Bob Lazar's physics and apply it to this, it doesn't really work. There's no thrust thing. There's nothing that correlates. There's no correlation between the angle and things. And Marik tries to make out that it's this perfect turn. That it's not. Yeah. It just happens to be a part of it during one turn. The other turns have no correlation to anything. So that he's really shoehorning this explanation in. Yeah. Now it's not like we have a perfect. This is definitely a plane explanation either.
Right.
There's lots of plausible trajectories that the object could have taken off in the distance that are plane speed and either more or less straight lines or curves, and some of them are descending. And there's so many variables, though, it's very difficult to kind of go through them all. This was something I was thinking about earlier today, how I could do this, maybe using some kind of AI, a genetic algorithm to kind of narrow it down. But right now, you have to tweak one thing, see what it looks like. It's very difficult to test all the paths. But there's plenty of plausible paths that look like plane paths.
Yeah. Well, there's so many exit stops between, it's a plane and an alien spaceship. There are probably 4,000 exit stops between those two answers.
Yeah,
and the fact that he's choosing the very last exit stop as the probability. It's wild. It's such a strange thing to watch in real time, because even when he found this expert, this Atfleer expert that worked for Raytheon, and the three of you guys sat down and started talking, and he asked the guy, well, have you ever seen this malfunction? Yeah, we see it all the time. Like it's a dirty plane. The part where he's like, the Atfleer, you got to understand, on an aircraft carrier, there's a dozen planes and there's only 3 Atfleers, so they're getting swapped around. They're getting used on different planes. They're getting detached and attached, and there's dust and dirt and grime and all sorts of things happen. They get bumped around, and then when they can't fix it on the ship in a quick fix, which is hilarious, then they take it to Jacksonville, which is somewhat controlled environment. But if they can't fix it, then they send it back to Raytheon. And it's like, how he does not say to himself,
things break.
Yeah. And all of the examples that he uses are like company videos where they're showing the technology to potential buyers. Yes, of course, the rotation of it is perfect because it's a sales video, man. It's not a real world scenario.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't have real world footage of this scenario, so we can't say for sure, whether what we're looking at is even, broken.
Right.
Is this something that does actually happen sometimes? Is it just something like, if you're going at a certain speed, the motors switch over to a different mode where they move in steps, and they move smoothly in other cases? We can't say. But I haven't even really put out a detailed hypothesis for this, other than the rotation thing. But Marik's constantly, bagging on me for not having released my best path hypothesis.
Yeah.
And it's not something I've really been that interested in, because it's something that I know that there's so many variables to the Gimbal case, so many possibilities, and it's not just there's so many variables. There's so much uncertainty about the data that we do have. If you take the stuff that's on screen, that's data, but it's not particularly high resolution data. Like the angles are like 1 degree when you need 1,000th of a degree to be accurate. And then the bank angle of the plane is just derived from the pixels of the line. So it's we don't have like high fidelity data for a start. So there's going to be error bounds over whatever you do.
And it doesn't look like we're going to get that data either, according to
Kirkpatrick. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, So at this point, arguing to this level, it's silly. It's just so silly. Unless you can get a plane, unless you can get a plane and recreate it in real life. And I think the next best thing you could do is try and recreate it in a lab with some of the things that you were suggesting earlier. But I think even when that lab report does come out and all of the science of it does come out, there's still going to be something that he's going to underline or circle with a red marker and post as a picture and take it completely out of context. I just don't understand the motivation. It seems like, man, you've got a great job at the Hill. You worked within an arm's length of Obama for some reason. Like this is the thing that you're paying the bills with. It's just, it's strange. It's such a weird, thing.
I mean, you could theorize that he's being paid by somebody, but I really can't see how that makes any sense either. I think it's more likely that just he personally has become convinced by the usual pantheon of evidences, and he thinks it's important. So he's pulling out all the stops to make it work. But unfortunately, I think he goes a little bit too far in his in being a bit misleading.
Well, I also think the biggest difference between you and him is I can find you on LinkedIn. And I can look at your resume. I can't find Marik on, there's nothing you can find about him other than what journalists have dug up, and that he was a former. It's mysterious. It's a very
I don't want to get into conspiracy theories.
I guess what I've learned about myself, Mick, is that I definitely have a propensity to at least listen to conspiracy theories or like conspiracy theories. And I agree with you. We shouldn't turn it into conspiracy theory, but there's such a lack of data on this person that's making these big claims on a pretty decent sized platform. And you just want to know about the person that's sharing these quote facts. And it's a dark hole that leads to the Department of Defense. It's kind of hard for you not to go, well, that's really weird.
I'm a big fan of openness and transparency, which I think is kind of good, really, that Lou Elizondo is releasing his book with telling his story. It kind of throws light upon a number of things. But, we knew that about everybody, really.
We coined the term resting Mick face on this show, and I think that last thing you just said was a perfect example. It's so funny. Okay, so we'll get to Lou and the book Imminent in a second, then we'll get to questions. But before we do, I want to just hit really quickly, what the hell is wrong with Matt Ford, and why is he going after you in a way that he is? I mean, he's devoted entire shows with a researcher that is not a researcher, doing all of these connecting of the dots to you being paid to change information on Wikipedia to make people look more disqualified in the UFO field. What is happening?
Matt Ford, Emmy award-winning lighting designer, I think he's a true believer. I mean, he had a number of experiences that he relates where he saw glowing orbs over his house. Which would be, a pretty scary and dramatic thing to happen to anybody. And this has caused him to be a believer in whatever the mystery of UFOs, them being something like non-human intelligence or something like that. He's also he has a show which he kind of structures like a TV show. He never really had very many viewers, but he managed to get like fairly big names on it. I don't know if Elizondo's been on it. He may have done, but a variety of people have been on his show. And he's someone who's is visited with Elizondo. You can see him at the pub in Wyoming with Elizondo, and he's in the inner circle.
Right.
Now, Elizondo is a very charismatic person. If you read the introduction to the foreword to his book by Chris Mellon, you see Chris Mellon gushing over Elizondo, how he's a hero and how muscular he was, and how he gave all these really compelling accounts of UFOs, and how Elizondo really convinced him that there was something to it. And this is something that you, I'm sure, have heard from a lot of other people as well.
Yep.
Is that Elizondo is a very compelling person, and he's someone who can make a great case verbally. A great sounding case, and is someone that a lot of people have been kind of fallen under his spell, essentially, because he's such a good person at making these arguments. And I think that's the type of thing that's happened to people like Matt Ford, is that they become big Elizondo fans, and they think Elizondo is this hero figure. This is something you see in lots of other areas of UFOs. On UFO Twitter, there's this weird kind of toxic subculture of people who are call Lou Elizondo like Papa Lou, and like Lou is a hero and things like that.
Well,
it's
really I used to be one of those guys, right? I mean, I used to have Lou on the show all the time. I had his dad on my show. I used to be a big proponent and a big fan and a big sort of advocate for him. And I think he wins you over with this. Well, I'm telling you the truth. Look at my resume. I'm in the military. Why would I lie to you? Have you seen my pinned tweet? And I think that really, even for me, that was for me especially because I already had the belief system in place. So when I heard this guy, whoa, what? He's on New York Times. He's doing what? Yeah, he came into my restaurant. Wait, this is crazy. It was very easy to get caught up in his wake because he is a force when you do meet him.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of the Elizondo people, Elizondo has me blocked, but a lot of the Elizondo people see me as being like the enemy. Yeah, and a lot of them genuinely think that I'm like a paid disinformation person, like that I'm being paid to.
Well, can I ask you once and for all, are you being paid by any entity whatsoever to move the UFO narrative in any certain direction?
No. The only things I'm being paid for, I can say what I'm being paid for. I'm being paid to write code, which I'm writing this sitrec tool, write code and a bit of documentation, all of which is entirely public domain, open source. Anyone can go and look at every single thing that I've done for these people who are paying me. I get paid to write articles for Skeptical Inquirer magazine, which I have a copy of it somewhere, but it's just the magazine of the skeptics, the international, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry.
And so you're not paid to change Wikipedia.
No, and I haven't actually edited Wikipedia hardly at all in the last, like, I don't know how long it is now, 18 years or something. It's a long time. Because, I used to be that's how I kind of started with my kind of online skepticism, was actually editing Wikipedia in like 2005. Which, a very long time ago. And I didn't really like it that much. I did a spat of it. I get obsessed by things, and I got into studying biblical scientific foreknowledge, which is the idea that there's evidence in the Bible of science that couldn't have been known at the time, therefore God is real. And so I was basically arguing with people on the talk pages and making edits and then getting into edit wars and things like that. And I didn't. It was all right. It passed the time, but it wasn't really a very productive use of time.
Go on.
So what did I do? Like, then I started wanted to talk about this Morgellons thing.
Yeah.
And which was this kind of disease that people thought that they had where fibers came out of their skin. And I think around that time I decided, like, I don't want to really be writing about this under my real name, because it was like a very sensitive subject for a lot of people and a bit weird and unusual. And so I saw most people on Wikipedia don't use their real names. Yeah. They're basically anonymous. So I changed my name from Mick West to Herd of Swine, which was because I just read like an episode of the Lego Bible, which was this funny online thing where people make episodes of the Bible from Lego. And one of them was about this. Anyway, it's
a herd of swine.
Long story. Yeah, herd of swine. It was a demon got cast out into a herd of swine.
Interesting.
Anyway, so I changed my name, and then I edited for the herd of swine for a while, and then a bit later, I wanted to edit an article I'd edited as Mick West. I think it was on a game I'd written called Parasol Stars, an Amiga game, and so I edited it using my original name. And then somehow this got like flagged as being me using two accounts at the same time. Right. And then my Mick West account got banned because of this. So it got banned for me editing an article that I'd already edited.
So huge controversy.
It was a real pain. So then I gave up with Wikipedia because it was like, what the fuck? It's like, I can't deal with these people. I tried to explain to people what the deal was, and they were like, no, these are the rules. And so I just went and started my own blog at that point. And
Metabunk? That's when you started Metabunk?
No, I started a blog called Contrail Science, which is all about chemtrails.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
because I was actually editing the contrail. Well, I just started. I think I just started doing a little bit of contrail stuff when I got banned, and so I started this Contrail Science blog. Did that for a couple of years, then did Metabunk, and the rest is history.
So I guess we'll end this with Matt Ford, because I know that at some point you did ask him, hey, let's have a debate about this. If you guys think I did this, like, show me your evidence. Like, and then it went radio silence. But have you had like any private conversations with this guy to be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, and it has this drumming, this beating of the drum, because honestly, I think the drum that this guy beats is for the extreme wing of this belief system.
Nobody's paying any attention to it.
So you haven't gotten any issues from it. Nobody's like threatened you over it.
I mean, people joke about it, but no one cares. I mean, Susan Gerbic probably gets more heat than me. She's the one who's the leader of guerrilla skeptics on Wikipedia. She actually does edit Wikipedia, unlike me. She has one of these plaques on her wall as well.
Susan Go does.
I don't think she does.
No, okay. All right, you're kidding.
Susan Gerbic.
Gerbic.
Yes,
okay, I thought you said Go. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Susan Gerbic. Okay, yeah, I've heard of Susan Gerbic. She is the one who actually does.
Yeah, she's the Wikipedia
editor. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
And
I gotta speak with her. I gotta bring her on the show because I'd love to get her insights
she's an interesting person.
But you think she's getting a lot of flack for this?
She did, and it was a bit upsetting for her, I think. But she's used to it. She's got a thick skin. She's been involved with all kinds of skeptical inquiry for a while. She ran sting operations on psychic mediums for a while. Like they would go to the mediums events and like pretend to have like a dead relative, and then they demonstrate how that they would. They'll talk to the assistant about something, and then they'll demonstrate how exactly what they told the assistant is what the guy told them. That's that type of thing. Or they'd use radio receivers to try to intercept the radio earbud the guy had in his ear. So she's done a bunch of like kind of good work for skeptical science.
That's great.
And she isn't really interested in UFOs.
Yeah.
They do like less than 5% of the edits they do have been UFO related. Wow. And I think most of that is just because of the recent stuff.
Right.
So she's more interested in like medicine, like pseudoscience, quackery. What's that? Facilitated communication, where somebody takes somebody's hand and makes them type stuff out.
Right.
How that's often like abused by the communicator. So she does like a whole bunch of different stuff, and she does, so like Matt Ford and this Rob Heatherly guy.
Oof.
They're just obsessed for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of see it. Like if they think it's true, then yeah, it would be a big deal. But it's not true. So, but I can't see how to dissuade them of it because they're so convinced it's not true. It is true, and they think I'm lying. So basically, they think I edit Wikipedia,
Right.
and they think that I am a Wikipedia editor called Lucky Louie,
With no
which I'm
evidence.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then they claim that they've taken all the stuff I wrote on Wikipedia and all the stuff that Lucky Louie wrote on Wikipedia,
Yeah.
and they used AI to see what the Fleisch indexes were
Commonalities.
of these two things, and apparently we're exactly the same.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
I
have
don't
you
know, maybe
sent?
we
Have
are,
you?
but it's not
Has
me.
anyone sent them the file of all of the sock puppet accounts from Lou Elizondo and compared that to his real account? Because that's actually
That would be
something.
interesting. I
That's
actually thought
actually
of doing
something you
that.
could see some real
Yeah,
commonalities with,
yeah, definitely.
unlike the ones that they're making with you. Yeah, no, Rob Heatherly is a troublemaker indeed. His son physically assaulted somebody at the Ozark UFO convention. They are, yeah, they're the to me they're the extreme parts of this conversation, because we got an email from the producer of one of the shows that Rob Heatherly used to be a part of, telling us that him and Lou Elizondo would look for information on people to discredit them. And it's such a weird little group of people
Yeah.
that are trying to find nefarious things. Like if Mick West had been arrested for, I don't know, not paying a parking ticket, they would have found that and used it to discredit you and all of the things that you say. But
Never been
because there's
arrested.
not that, they go after, they make these loosest, connections that can't be proved at all. It's insane.
Yeah, I think it's like the end justifies the means. I think for some people, like they feel that we're in a battle for humanity. That's what they think. They think
Yeah.
that the government is covering up the existence of our connection to alien races and our possession of alien technology that could revolutionize the world, like free energy is the other thing, and like easy travel to the stars, that type of thing. A new golden age of humanity will be ushered in if only we could prove Mick West was Lucky Louie.
Right.
So
Right.
they focus on these things because they think, me editing Wikipedia in their minds is this big impediment to disclosure. And so they think that if they can expose me editing Wikipedia, which I don't, then it will help usher in this golden age of humanity by forcing the government to do disclosure. And so they think that it's okay to get dirt on people. It's almost like they're the French resistance killing Nazis.
Right.
Not that they're going to kill people, but that you feel justified to do things that you wouldn't do normally if you feel that the cause is important and just. And I think that's kind of what's happening with the variety of people in the scene.
Right on. Okay, so we got a caller, somebody who called in wants to ask you a question. Name, it looks like Al. Al, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Al?
What's your
Yeah,
question
good.
for Mick?
Quite a while ago, you had an interesting guy on us talking about the more religious aspects of things, the sort of cult, aspects of this and belief in general. So I just wanted sort of to get Mick's take on because it's really far out. A lot of this stuff's very far out. Yeah, so just interested in the sort of more culty aspects of this. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a good point. A good question. Because I think there's two aspects there really, religion and cults, which obviously have some overlap sometimes. But with religion, it's kind of like what I was just talking about, that people feel that we're about to transcend to the next stage of humanity. It's almost like the UFOs are angels, or something, some beings that are helping humanity move forward. And it seems very much like something with religious overtones, like the Messiah coming to save humanity is the same thing as aliens coming in the UFOs to save humanity. And I think both things kind of speak to the same human needs to to be rescued from this life and to be set up with a better life, and also to try to understand the universe. Like if God were to descend from the heavens, that would provide an explanation for the universe. And if aliens were to arrive and show us all this technology, we'd be able to understand the universe a lot better as well. And some of the mysteries of the universe might be revealed. So that part of, there's a very good correlation between religion and belief in UFOs in that aspect. Of course, there's lots of other scientific aspects of ufology as well. It's not just religion. And then cults, well, you can kind of see some of that with the people we've been talking about, like Lou Elizondo as being a charismatic leader who exerts undue influence upon his followers. And this is something that some of the people have come forward and have talked about. People who were in Elizondo's inner circle talk about how he was a charismatic figure and how they were kind of drawn in by him, but eventually kind of figured out that what he was saying wasn't entirely genuine or entirely correct, and that does remind me of cults-like behavior. And some of the stuff you see like online is organized harassment of people.
It was an organized harassment of you.
Yeah. I mean, there was people like somebody tried to someone signed me up for a whole bunch of mailing lists once. People will send me photos and things like that, but I block people pretty quickly, and so it doesn't really have any effect. But that people try to dissuade me, and people probably look into my private life and try to find dirt on me. But I'm a squeaky clean guy, unfortunately. So they don't get anything. But it does seem somewhat.
You don't
cult-like.
say. The guy who was doing Wikipedia entries on religious comparisons. You're squeaky clean. Get out of here.
I still have the books on my bookshelf.
Al, thanks for the question. Did you have any follow-ups or anything else you wanted to put in there?
No, not particularly. I'm very thankful for Mick's work and his sort of state of mind. And thanks very much, Lou.
Hey, thanks, Al. I appreciate the question. Thanks for calling in. We've got a question from the audience here, and it is okay. So we got a couple questions. Okay, the first one is for Mick. Are we alone? That's a pretty overarching question there, but are we alone, I mean, Mick West? The ultimate
everyone knows
question.
the answer to these questions. They get asked all the time, and we should just have a card or something we can put up. Not to belittle the question, but it's all scientists would tell you that it's fairly likely that somewhere in the entire universe, life other than human life has arisen at some point. Whether that made it to, what percentage of that made it to industrial, the stages of civilization is unknown. There's lots of variables, and everyone's familiar with the Drake equation. Well, not everyone's familiar with it. Anybody who's a ufologist has probably heard of the Drake equation, where you multiply, I think, 7 or 8 different numbers together, and it gets you a probability of there being life in the universe. But even that equation by itself isn't very good by itself. Even though there's probably a life somewhere in the universe, if it's very, very far away, it may as well not exist.
Yeah.
This galaxy is one of billions and billions of galaxies. What if it's one per galaxy? If it's one per galaxy, it might as well not exist at all.
Right.
Because the galaxy is so big, you've got a big empty galaxy, and the next galaxy over is a shitload of light years over there. You think the nearest star is a long way away. It take you 1,000 years to get to the nearest star. To get to the nearest galaxy would probably take you probably couldn't even get there. It's probably moving away from us faster than we would be able to travel. It's not something that we could do with current technology. So
unless you could go through a black hole like Matthew McConaughey.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if you can theorize ways of doing it, but as far as we know, you can't travel faster than the speed of light.
So the answer is yes, but just not
probably.
Here.
The answer is probably. I wouldn't say yes because I've not seen this other life, but almost certainly there is been life and there will be life elsewhere in the universe, and I'm pretty sure that there's intelligent life out there.
Well, just for fun and just for the people, can you put a percentage on it that it's been here?
No. Let's see.
I mean, I'm not afraid to say 0.0001.
No, I 99.999. I mean, almost certainly there is life out there.
Yeah.
But
out there.
in terms of like how many planets have life, it's in the 0.000 something range.
So no von
life
Neumann
being
probes, you think,
here.
yeah.
That's also very, very unlikely, I think. It's one of those things that it's difficult to put a probability on it because you don't know what the answer is. Probability is something that you can do with things that happen over and over again. Like if you toss a coin, you can easily see rapidly that it's a 50-50 chance of it ending one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know, if you just toss a coin once, if you've never seen a coin before, it comes down on heads, maybe you're going to think that, like, you know, it never comes down on tails.
Right.
But, you know, maybe it's a fancy coin that only comes up tails once in a million. You don't know that. You don't know what the reality is. So it's very difficult to put a probability on it. And so that leads to people putting a 50-50 probability on it.
Yeah.
Which
I'm going to say it's not difficult. I'm going to go 1%, less than 1%. Less than 1% for me.
That aliens have visited Earth?
Yeah, that have either flown by, said hello, interacted, done, you know, maybe even a von Neumann probe, and it came here, it did its thing, and then it left, maybe.
I think if a von Neumann probe
less than 1%
been by, we would see evidence elsewhere in the universe of these von Neumann probes, like Dyson spheres and whatnot, and radio transmissions. But
well, who knows?
Who knows?
James Webb might be showing us some neat things here in the next decade.
I'm hopeful.
Would you be shocked if we see a Dyson sphere or something like that in James Webb?
No. Well, yes, I would be shocked. I mean, I don't think it's improbable, though. I think this is the type of thing that will happen. You know, civilizations will make Dyson spheres or something similar. Dyson sphere, for those who don't know, is just basically a giant sphere encircling a star, so you can capture all the energy of the star and use it to run ChatGPT.
Right, which make
so yeah, I think it will probably
powered
happen.
by the sun. Yeah, no, that would be
1 million.
Yeah, I love it. No, I mean, well, that's what on the Kardashev scale, type 3 civilization, right? Type 2, being able to control the power, harness the power of a sun.
I think that's type 1, actually. That scale, it escalates rapidly.
Right.
And the type 1 civilizations are pretty advanced. And then I think it goes to like transcending reality or transcending the physical realm.
Yeah.
Which I don't know about that, but
okay. Well, that's kind of a bummer that you don't know about that, Mick. I was hoping you know everything. Okay, so
I got opinions on everything.
Who's Mick West's favorite skeptic of all time? That's a good one. I picture you have a man cave, and in this man cave are framed pictures of your favorite skeptics.
I have no pictures on the wall. I think I would go with Richard Feynman as being like my favorite skeptic, even though he wasn't really a skeptic. He was a scientist, but Richard Feynman was just kind of an irreverent physicist. Who worked on the Manhattan Project, and he worked on all the way up to the investigation of the Challenger disaster. And he was one of the people who he kind of broke through bureaucracy to a degree. This is all kind of somewhat romanticized via the books and things. But he was the one who did this demonstration in the Challenger hearing, where he took a O-ring from the shuttle or a bit of an O-ring and put it in some ice water, and then demonstrated that it lost its elasticity.
Wow.
And by doing this very, very good demonstration of something, it convinced people. And that's what I like to do. I like to do demonstrations of things. What is a
moment like that you've had personally where you've been able to just demonstrate something as clearly, maybe not as perfectly as that, of course everyone strives for a moment like that, but I'm wondering, is there ever a moment where you were like, all right, Mick, good job on that one?
Well, the one that springs to mind, it's not that big really. It's just, there was
it's okay to pat yourself on the back. Yeah.
The jellyfish case?
Yeah. The Corbel jellyfish.
There was a guy who was a witness to events. Like he'd seen the videos on the base.
Yeah.
He wasn't an actual eyewitness, but he was saying that he thought it was something because it changed temperature. because there's this jellyfish UFO moving over this army base in Iraq.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night. It's hot, and then it moves and it changes, so it looks like it's cold, so it looks like it's changing temperature.
Yeah.
And I said, well, the background changes temperature as well. And then he was like, no, it doesn't. Like, you can see it's the same. And so I just kind of took the video up and moved to a point where I knew that it changed temperature, and I just kind of moved it back and forth for a couple of times without saying anything. And he was like, no, it doesn't actually change temperature. Then he was like, oh yeah, it does. Yeah, I see it now. Okay, right. So demonstrating things to people is the way to go. Yeah, talk is cheap. Like, we can talk all we like about how moving across the X-shaped thing in the water would have taken like 0.3 seconds, and that would imply a velocity of 500 miles per hour instead of the 100 miles per hour they said. Yeah, it's meaningless. It's just words that wash over people. But if you can actually demonstrate that somehow, like the VR thing I was talking about, that's really what makes the difference.
Well, I think, okay, so may I just sort of gloat about you for a second? My favorite Mick West moment, number one at the top, is gotta be Boca. Because you solved it so quickly.
Yeah,
and
10 minutes, I think.
It was just so funny how quickly you debunked that, and the answers for it were so bad. But I think my favorite part is because look, I would just name them: Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. When they put out videos like this, and you just so quickly, eloquently, and abruptly end it with reality and facts and good data. And I think my favorite part is the silence that we get from them. They never address it again. They never come back to it. They never correct it. They never say, oh, I got it wrong, or shit, Mick made a good point on this. It's put the information out there and put your hands up and walk away. But I love that you're there. It's very much appreciated.
Some people think I do it too fast.
I think the faster, the funnier. Like, to me, it makes me laugh so hard. Like, I believe you did the same thing with 29 Palms, did you not? You figured out 29 Palms pretty quickly.
But I mean, I said it was flares pretty much straight away, I believe. But it's something you had to look at for a while. But it was pretty apparent just looking at it. I mean, with hindsight, I think if you look at the videos now, you can see like the smoke trails behind the flares in the photo that's kind of purplish tinged. And then when these other photos came out from the DoD photos. But of course, the funny thing is that all these cases that have been conclusively explained, debunked or explained, there's still loads of people who believe in them. There's like the Chilean Navy case, which we know 100% was Iberian Flight 6830. Yeah, there was a TV show like a year ago, less than a year ago, where they were all like, we don't know what this is for sure. Some people say it's a plane, but why wasn't it on the radar? We know why it wasn't on the radar. It's all these things were answered. So it's like, it makes good TV, so they keep with it. Like the 29 Palms, you'll find people think 29 Palms was actually a giant football field sized craft flying, and it was all covered up, and the flares were sent up to illuminate it, and all these things, like even the green triangle. There's still people who think that they were actually flying green crafts. Yeah. And I think
it's so tough, and I'm wondering.
Like, Travis Taylor thinks that.
Yeah, which is, well, I don't think he really does. I think he's too smart. I think he's just dug in his heels.
He says a lot of things that he doesn't believe.
He digs in his heels on a lot of this stuff.
I don't know. I'm not too sure about him.
I don't think he believes a lot of it.
I'm not entirely sure that he doesn't.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
his
everything
fan fiction I've heard is really good.
Behind the scenes, you watch like this Skinwalker Ranch Insider. I joined that for a while, and watching some of that, they really seem to genuinely believe it all. And Travis Taylor, like he emailed me a few years ago, like, and tried to tell me something about. And he seemed like he genuinely believed the work he was doing, even though it was terrible. It was a lot of it was had terrible mistakes in it. I pointed out to him.
Yeah,
I think he believes a lot of it.
I think they know. Mick, at this point. Like,
Some of
especially
it.
like when I asked the thing that ended my relationship with Brandon Fugel when I asked him about, if you guys believe in the skinwalker, if you believe that this thing can transfer from one person to another, why are you giving hugs and shaking hands at UFO cons? Like, if you're that genuinely concerned about people getting lumps in their head like like your team has, why would you guys go shake hands and hug people? And of course, there's no good answer for that.
Why do they have a TV camera crew there? Why, it's everybody's dying of radiation poisoning.
Right.
Well, they don't, of course, but all this stuff's going on. Skinwalker Ranch, like, it's pretty ridiculous. Like, at best, there's somebody there with a GPS jammer.
Yeah.
That explains like 95% of everything that's going on.
I agree.
I agree. So the recent episode, all the drones fell out of the sky.
No, I stopped watching. I can't anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, a lot of this stuff for me, a lot of the wonderment and fun of it is gone, just because now all I see is just people spreading really terrible information and wasting
over and over again.
Yeah, it's wasting. I don't know. It's wasting a lot of people's time. And
it's entertainment.
It's entertainment, but to a point. At what point, though? There's a line. There's a line.
I think what's his name? The little scientist guy, Eric Bard.
Okay, the little scientist guy.
Well, as opposed to Travis Taylor, who's the big scientist guy. The Eric Bard really believes it.
Yeah,
he's really into it.
Yeah. But then again, the whole team, except for Travis Taylor, used to belong or does belong to the Mormon Church.
And they're all part
so
of the
like when you start learning those things, you're like, oh, okay, I understand what's happening here. It's just like me, it's a bunch of people who have a propensity to believe bullshit, or not bullshit, but just they believe things sight unseen. If they see it must be real.
They think it's important, though. I mean, they generally believe, especially the crew members like Dragon, I think Bryant Arnold, and the other guy,
Travis Winter.
Travis. Yeah, is it Travis? Anyway, these people.
Thomas Winterton. Sorry.
Yeah, that was it. They do seem to believe that they're doing good science. And they believe that there's a genuine phenomena.
I disagree again. Just because I've had Dragon on the show, we would make fun of the science to his face. We'd be like, "Come on, man, this isn't science. Like, first of all, there's no hypothesis.
Yeah.
Nobody's putting out a hypothesis. There's no, repeating of any experiments except for bottle rockets in the air. I don't know, man.
Yes.
It seems like it's by the time you're on season 5 of any television show, union or non-union, it's a really nice paycheck. And it's a nice break from a regular, normal.
Well, I'm not on a nice paycheck.
Yeah, well,
I'm not on Skinwalker Ranch. I'm on. What am I on? The proof is out there.
The proof is out there. What are UFOs? But
that's
it's not
a different
5
show.
seasons.
I'm actually on a different History Channel show. Anyway,
but you know what I'm saying. You're not the star. You're doing phenomenons in your home state that pays you $10,000 to show up and tell spooky stories. You get paid extra if you do dinners. Like, there's a lot of money in this stuff. There's a lot of money.
I went to the UFO conference in Pasadena where Travis Taylor and the crew were. I had to pay for my own ticket. It was terrible.
Right.
And 2 people asked me for my interview, though, my autograph, which is kind of fun.
That's great. I love it. It's awesome.
Like the one place where I might get recognized is a UFO conference.
We got a couple more questions from the audience, and then I'm going to get you out of here. So this one's from B. Baker. She asks, what does Mick think of the Shag Harbor case? There are radar, many witnesses, and a lot of documentation. Have you had a chance to look at that case, the Shag Harbor
I'm afraid it's not a case that I'm familiar with. I'm assuming it's one of the older cases, and
there's
don't
no video.
really get interested in them because the data isn't particularly good. Like when people talk about there was radar data, it's often just something like people wrote down a few numbers, or sometimes they take photographs of the radar screen like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
you don't really get very good data, so you don't know how accurate it is, and then people's eyewitness recollections generally aren't that good, and obviously the photos and video from back then are usually pretty terrible as well. So
Right.
I feel like if there is something going on, then looking at cases from the last 20 years, say, where we do actually have high definition video cameras like knocking around, especially the last 10 years, that's the stuff I would like to focus on.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that makes sense. No, don't be sorry. That makes sense. So this question is from HTID Tricky, and they ask, do NHI narratives increase stigma for pilots reporting UAP?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a long-running stigma for pilots reporting like UAP, UFOs, and if you can get away from the idea that UFOs must be aliens, or if you're talking about UFOs, you're talking about aliens, then it will encourage more people to talk about it. This is actually something that I think was mentioned by Lou Elizondo in his book, is that when they went to interview people, they didn't talk about aliens. They just said, well, this might be some secret technology that you might have observed by accident. So that they're giving the people an excuse to talk about the case in a way that doesn't involve aliens. And then people start to talk about it. So if we can get across to people that when you see a UFO in the sky, it's not like it's either aliens or birds. These aren't your only two options. There's a whole bunch of other things that are possible, including like adversary stuff, or misidentified wayward drug smuggling aircraft or something like that. And so they should report it, even if it's a UFO technically.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that people are going to think it's aliens.
A couple of years back, UFO Twitter found a drug running drone. Like it was, I thought it was actually kind of impressive that UFO Twitter kind of sleuthed this out of the Department of Homeland Security, and we got that that drug running drone footage. It's like an hour and a half long of that
rubber duck.
Remember? Yeah, the rubber duck. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's for sure what that was, but that seemed like a plausible explanation.
Yeah,
a drug running drone, or
it stayed in a straight line. There was none of the 5 observables. It was on the border. A lot of things sort of point to that explanation. And yeah, I mean, for me, I think the most impressive part was that UFO Twitter was responsible for that, making it to a mainstream news headline. Like, so I think there are aspects of the community that are like, we are good at finding stuff. And it's just when we find stuff that goes against our belief system, that's when we kind of go, I don't like it.
Not everyone though. I mean, a lot of people will, if they find something and it isn't what they want, they will actually regretfully accept it. You look at some of the investigations that are done on Reddit, people will figure stuff out on Reddit, or Metabunk as well. But Reddit has more people who are actual UFO enthusiasts, like people who think it's non-human intelligence looking into it, and they do actually, they do accept it. So
is that right,
it's not
Mick?
like,
is that right? Because I raised you.
I like to think the best of people.
I raised you Ashton Forbes and MH370.
There's an anomaly. He's a weird person.
Man, it's wild. But okay, so here's kind of a 2-part question, because it's from the same person and it kind of goes on the same thing. And it is, what's Mick's take on guerrilla skeptics? And the second part of that is, can you broadly speak about online disinformation and conspiracy theories from hostile state actors? I don't know what that second one
questions.
is, but the guerrilla
He's
skeptics.
talking about active measures. But the first one is Guerrilla Skeptics. Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia is an organization that was founded and run by Susan Gerbic, who's a retired photographer. And she basically is set out to improve Wikipedia from a skeptical perspective, so scientific skepticism. So she finds articles on Wikipedia that have perhaps too much of a bias from people who believe in a certain thing. So something like, say, mediums or homeopathy or something like that, something that's essentially pseudoscience. But it has a lot of fans, so the fans edit Wikipedia. So you'll find pages where they don't have a good balance, or the page is not very good. It's like written by a fan like 10 years ago and then forgotten about. And then they'll rewrite the page, they'll improve the page by editing it and making it better. And she's got a team of volunteers who do that. And these are people who are members of like CSI, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, and who people read Skeptical Inquirer, and they go to the Skeptic Convention, CSI Con in Vegas. There's one coming up this year, and it's this. I keep using my wrong hand. This plaque here is a CSI fellowship, and I'm a member of that, and she's a member of that. But I'm not a member of Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia. I haven't edited Wikipedia for a long time. I do support their goals. I think it's good to improve articles. It's good to have more well-referenced science in articles, and it's good to have an open and honest dialogue about that in the talk pages of the articles. I think that sometimes some of the edits that they make are perhaps overly skeptical. They end up being almost like dismissive of things, where perhaps there's a little bit too much, too much prejudging of the case on the part of the skeptics. But I think largely their intentions are good, and most of the edits that they make are very good. They do very good improvements to the articles. But it's basically a bunch of volunteers, and any bunch of volunteers, you're going to have a mixed bag, and some of them are going to be more dogmatic about certain things than others. And so some of them are going to be a bit more, anti certain viewpoints than others. Like for example, Lou Elizondo's Wikipedia page. I think Susan Gerbic rewrote that using available references, and did a pretty good job of it. Yeah. But other people might have edited it and put things in that other people didn't like, and then people who are fans of Lou Elizondo were like, "Why are you doing this?" Right. Then people got confused about things, because a lot of the stuff that the guerrilla skeptics do on Wikipedia is basically conforming a page to Wikipedia guidelines. Wikipedia has a very detailed set of guidelines about what should happen. Like, for example, if someone's listed in a page on a list of people, then you don't include honorifics like doctor or PhD next to their name. And so there was one page that got edited. It might have been Lou Elizondo's page, where there was a list of people for some reason who, I don't know what the list was, but they removed all the things like that, like the PhDs. And so the people who were fans were like, "Oh, this is terrible. They've just gone in and removed all these credentials. They're trying to make these people look stupid," when all they were doing was just applying the rules. Right. So I think generally it's good people who mean well. Perhaps sometimes they overstep, but on balance, it's a good thing.
Okay. Question for Chrissy, and I think it's a pretty good one. Do you think that the trust no one mentality...
there was a second part to that question, sorry. Which was talking about disinformation.
Yeah, the disinformation conspiracy theories.
So very quickly there, I think
go ahead.
If you can look up the history of disinformation from Russia, for example, Russia being a state actor, and there's a thing called active measures, and there's this Russian word for it, and it's basically they trying to do disinformation warfare. They're basically trying to undermine the stability of a country by introducing rumors and false stories and things like that into that country. And so they do propaganda aimed at basically discrediting the American government, no matter who it is. So they want to destabilize America. This is something that they've been doing for a very, very long time. It's very well known that they do. We don't know exactly what they're doing now, but we can assume that they're doing some things like that. And of course, they will be doing things on social media. So if there's something like anything that will increase the distrust of the government, like if you could spread rumors that that UFOs are being covered up by the government, or that free energy is something that we can get and the government's covering it up, or that the government is forcing you to have vaccines that don't work, all these things increase the distrust of the government. So they're all things that would be promoted by a adversary government or foreign state actors, like active measures program, and particularly Russia, but quite possibly China and other countries too now. So it's definitely something that happens. We don't know the exact extent of it, but there's lots of people you can follow on Twitter who are interested in this type of thing, who've delved into it in quite a lot of detail. And it's a very very murky and winding rabbit hole to go down, but it's real stuff that does actually happen.
Do you think any of that stuff is happening from an internal source other than foreign state actors?
Well, I think people who are in the government, they essentially engage in propaganda, but you're technically not allowed to. There's a law where you're not allowed to spend money on influencing the American public in certain ways. I can't remember what the exact law is. And there was a law that got passed and it was amended recently. When I say recently, it was in the last 15 years or something. It was the something amendment. I can't remember what it was, but I'm sure someone will know what I'm talking about. But it basically changed the definition of propaganda so that we could do propaganda in foreign countries that might accidentally be viewed by Americans. Right. Because before, when you did propaganda, it was like you had a local radio station or you would drop leaflets from planes, right, and you wouldn't fertilize with America. Right. Because unless they picked up the radio from a long way away. But so now we have the internet. So the State Department wants to do propaganda in other countries, but that might accidentally get viewed by Americans. So they changed this law so that you could actually do that. And this was approved by the Amnesty International, I think it was, like a number of civil rights organizations. They thought it was actually a good thing because it codified exactly what you could do in the United States and what you could do, which is directed towards American people. So yeah, propaganda is illegal. Doesn't mean people don't do it. We have corrupt people in government and in industry. That is known. So who knows what's actually going on? But if they're doing it, they're going to do it very, very carefully because it is illegal.
Okay, question from Chrissy. Do you think that the trust no one mentality and the distrust of government agencies regarding UFO helps the apolitical narrative pushed by extreme right groups?
Yeah, I do. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. It's anything that engenders a distrust of government is good for people who want to do that. So that if you put something forward that has a conspiracy component or a distrusting government component, then that's all just gravy, really. It's just good stuff for what they're trying to do. You see people like Tucker Carlson talk about UFOs.
That's a good example.
I don't think it's really because he believes in UFOs. I think he thinks that it's something that he can use as a populist way of demonstrating what he thinks as being a government cover-up.
Yeah, drumming up more
telling
distrust.
You what they know.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the government trust the people? Why don't they tell us what they know?
Right.
It's just it's a refrain that you can riff on with UFOs as a background. And you've probably got a whole bunch of other things as well, and other people talk about it, like the UFO caucus type people, was Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna. They talk about it. I think one of them, I think it might have been Luna, was saying I'm not a flat earther or something like that. I'm someone who has a healthy distrust of science. So it's like it's people just going to a place where distrust of government is encouraged,
right?
Because they want to bring down the government. They want to be the government, so they're trying to foster distrust of the existing government. And if you can do that with UFOs,
it's an extreme. When I was talking to my friend, he's a Democratic contributor to Fox News. On Fox News, his name's Christopher Hahn. And when we were talking about the first big phone home and I was telling him about all this stuff, I swear to God, he said, this sounds like a right-wing propaganda narrative because it's hitting all of the things that the right-wing party loves to talk about: distrust of government, overspending, they're hiding things from you. It plays on all of those tropes that they already believe. So it just fits into that narrative beautifully. And I think you see that politically speaking, because most of the lawmakers that are championing this, especially the lawmakers that are championing it the loudest, are the extremes of their party. So Yeah, it's a great question and it's a great point. And yes, I think you're right. I think it is definitely they go hand in hand. Humphrey Bogart, the actual Humphrey Bogart, asks, "What, if any, UFO sightings does Mick think could have be something other than prosaic?" I think I've heard you say that your favorite case is the Tic Tac incident. Because there's so many unanswered variables to it. But which is there another case other than outside of that where you were like,
I don't think there's any.
That's a good one.
I don't think there's any cases where you can say for sure that it's not prosaic. Which ones are most likely to be not prosaic? I mean, Tic Tac is certainly an interesting case because of the eyewitness accounts. What David Fraver describes, and even what Alex Dietrich describes. So it's kind of difficult to, obviously the two accounts differ, but it's difficult to see how that could be something prosaic. My closest thing is that it's some kind of balloon that was released by a submarine. So the submarine accounts for the white water, and it's just submerging. It's released this balloon, which is some kind of weapons test or something, or a radio test. The balloon goes up into the air. And then when Fraver comes down, there's just a parallax illusion where he doesn't see, doesn't judge the distance accurately, so he thinks it's some way. So that's my best thing, but it's not a very convincing explanation. You tell most people about it, and they're like, "No, it's just ridiculous, Mick. And why would I trust you and not David Fraver?"
Well, especially juxtaposed to David Fraver's account of it. It's
exactly.
It's so easy to just shit on anyone with any sort of opinion or possible explanation.
Yeah.
Because the second that you do, you're attacking them.
Yeah, and it's like, how dare you insult this brave hero?
Yeah.
Which it's not what I'm doing. I'm just I'm presenting another hypothesis, which unfortunately involves David Fraver making a couple of mistakes, which I'm sure he's made a couple of mistakes in his lifetime, but these are the ones that we're talking about. But there's lots of cases where if you just take what was said, they sound amazing. There was one in Lou Elizondo's book, which I just read today, the bit that was released. It's where he talks about a video that he saw, whereas it's just out of cockpit, I think, and there's giant black triangle flies up in front of the plane, and the pilot starts screaming, and that's about all he talks about it. But if that happened, what's that? That's something that's amazing.
Yeah.
But we don't know what happened. We have this second-hand account of it from Lou Elizondo, maybe third-hand account. We saw the video, I guess, but we haven't seen the video. If I was to see the video, I would perhaps be more compelled. Why haven't we seen this video? Why didn't he get that video out instead of Gimbal and Go Fast, which are just like fuzzy blobs in the distance? Why don't we see this amazing video? So there are lots and lots of cases that we just don't have enough information. They sound amazing, but we don't have enough information to say that they are definitely amazing. And that would be a great thing to actually get one of those cases. One that actually is definitely amazing. But
I've always said
hasn't happened in the last 70 years.
Yeah, anytime somebody comes to me with a new video or something, my first question always is, well, have you run it by Mick West? Because if he hasn't looked at it, I'm not interested in it. And so I'm glad that there's always a place where we can send these videos, or these when these cases do come up. It's always fun that you are available and you're always so open and so just genuine in your efforts and in your responses. So I appreciate that. I have two things here. One last question, and I'm gonna change it a bit here just so we could get you out of here. Because we've taken up 2 hours of your time, but not that I don't like you. I love you, Mick. I don't want to kick you out of here. But if you can, in one word, how do you feel about Jaime Maussan's groundbreaking reveal of a dead alien space mummy next to Ryan Graves?
Bullshit.
All right. Yes. I love it. Oh, I'm so happy I changed the asking of that question. Okay. So there are a few more questions, but we're going to let you get out of here because we've taken so much of your time. So guys, thanks for all the questions that you threw in there. I did want to give you an opportunity, Mick, because I know that you're working with PBS and with Nova.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted you to get, just a quick opportunity to explain the show. When's it coming out? And what excites you about it?
Well, it's PBS Nova, which is a very well-known science show. And so they focus very much on being scientifically accurate. It's not like, History Channel type stuff.
Right.
Nothing against History Channel, sorry.
No,
But,
that was a
History
knock
Channel,
against History Channel. That
History Channel is perhaps a bit more focused on entertainment than they are on education. Whereas Nova, I talked to the producers and the director and a bunch of people who work on the show, and they're all really into science. It's great. It's really good. They still have to make a show that appeals to a popular audience, so it's not going to be like hard nitty-gritty showing math and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they are at least trying to do science. They do experiments like with infrared cameras and things like that. So they're getting some of the good science out there, and that's really what excites me about it, and using UFOs as an excuse to do science. I don't know if they're going to resolve anything in terms of what any of the videos are or what the reality of UFOs are. They'll probably still have the same arguments afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think they'll give some people things to think about, and they'll show some of the ways that UFOs can be scientifically investigated. And also they try to make the case that that UFOs should be investigated because they do represent things that are of some concern. If a pilot's seeing something, he doesn't know what it is,
well, also there
should
could
figure
be
out what it is.
There could be a discovery there. Like there could be some kind of atmospheric phenomenon or something, maybe even a species. Who knows? That we just do. It's very difficult to catch on camera or to explain.
There are atmospheric phenomena that have only been discovered in the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Some, I think, in the last 10 years. Look up Crown Flash. That's one of the more amazing things out there.
You go.
Crown Flash.
I will check that out.
Only recently caught on video.
Is this show going to be a series or is it a single episode?
It's a 1 hour film.
Okay, good.
And it's not coming out, unfortunately, until next year.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, that's cool, Mick. I'm excited for you. I can't wait to see it, and we'll have you back on when the show premieres, and maybe we could talk some more about it. Mick West, it is always a pleasure to have you here, sir. Thank you again for being a shining light in a very dark rabbit hole. It's nice to have you here, and I say this now every time I talk to you, but thank you for helping me get out of the rabbit hole. You were a big part of that. I'll always be indebted to you for that. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate all your work. Is there anything else you'd like to say before you get out of here, where people could find you? Or?
No, but I'm always open to. Well, I guess yes. I'm also open to questions and suggestions. And if you got a UFO video, you can. I'll take a quick look at it. I can't promise anything, but I'll always take a quick look. And if it's something I recognize or something I think needs more investigation, I'll get into it. So send it to me. I'm on Twitter at Mick West, and you can email me mick@mickwest.com.
All right. Well, Mick West, again, man, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. And to hell with Matt Ford, and to hell with all of these, with Marik Von Klompenstick. I don't think they mean well. I think you give them too much credit here, Mick West.
They think they're on the side of good.
You are genuinely a gentle soul. You really are, because you do have. I think you have the right to eviscerate these people, what they've done and said about you. But I'm glad that you don't. I'm glad that you can control your emotions a lot better than I can. But then again, I'm a comedian. And I'm not a scientist or an engineer, so I'm allowed to respond however the hell I want. But yeah, you're appreciated, man. Thank you.
All right. Great.
All right, buddy.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, guys. That was Mick West. Always a pleasure to have Mick West on the show. He is a gem of a man. And yeah, it's hard. I love to make him laugh because we get him out of the resting Mick face. But yeah, he's a good guy, man. He's a good guy, and he is genuinely providing arguments from an honest, insincere place. And when he's wrong, he'll own it. And when he's right, you should own it. And he's right a lot of the times, especially when it comes to the UFO videos and all of the terrible information that's being put out there. So with all of that said, you guys, this was a hell of a show. Thank you everyone to ask questions, and to Al who popped into the show, and to all of my subscribers and followers and Patreon members out there, people who donate cash to this show. Thank you so fucking much from the bottom of my heart. It truly helps every single month. When I get that $130 or whatever it is, you know, for doing this show, it always helps. It always comes at the perfect time. And I love doing this show. I love talking to people like Mick West, and I love demystifying this UFO discussion for you guys, because there's a lot of bad information out there. So, you know, we need more people to help sift through it, and I hope that this show is one of those places for you. With that said, if you liked the show, please like it. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, and ring that bell. If you guys aren't catching us live, you're catching us in a replay, comment down below. I try to get to as many comments and questions as I can. I'm a very busy person. It's incredibly difficult for me to keep up with all the comments and stuff, but I try. And yeah, that's it. You guys have a wonderful rest of your week. I want to make a show announcement. We are having Manny 503 on Friday, so we're going to have another guest on Friday. So this week is packed with guests. And if you guys have any other great guest ideas that you want to see, send them my way. And if we could get them on here, we can. I'm definitely going to try to get Susan Gerbic. We have to, right? We have to talk to her. Anyway, with that said, you guys, enjoy the rest of your week. I will see you on Friday. Until next time, peace out. Eric Moyer, thank you so much for the $10 donation. You're a gem, man. Thank you. I love you all. Seriously. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll even turn the camera back on for that one. Thank you, Eric Moyer. A tip of the cap. All right, guys. See you Friday. Love you all. Peace out.